Hi, I'm Naomi Murphy, and this is the Locked Up Living podcast, where we talk with a wide range of people about harsh aspects of institutional life.
We also explore some of the ways to overcome them and to grow and develop. I'm David Jones. So join us every Wednesday morning, 6 o'clock UK time, for a fresh podcast.
So today's guest is Michael Allison, and we were introduced to your work, Michael, by a previous guest of ours, Sally Needham, who gave you a ringing endorsement. And Michael is a polyvagal performance consultant, an educational partner at the Polyvagal Institute, and is the founder of the Playzone. He's worked with many high-profile teams and also organisations in both the business and sporting world. His Playzone work is endorsed by Stephen Porges, and he writes regularly for Psychology Today. I'm really pleased you could join us today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I look forward to seeing how this all plays out together.
Excellent. So very nice to meet you, Michael. So as I understand it, and I know very little about polyvagal theory, so this is going to be an education for me. But as I understand it, central to all your work is polyvagal theory. So I wonder if you could give us a brief overview of what this is for anyone who's listening, like myself, who doesn't have much experience of that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give it my best shot because it's a pretty in-depth theory that was developed by Dr. Stephen Porges. And to sort of sum it up in a way that is understandable and usable, really our physiological state, meaning how we're breathing, how our heart is beating, how we're creating energy in our body, the amount of muscle tension, how our organs are really being regulated. That's what I mean by physiological state. And that's all happening through the autonomic nervous system beneath our conscious control. But how that's all playing out internally has a really big influence on how we experience the world. And at the same time, it has a really big influence on how others and the world interpret and experience us. Okay, so that polyvagal theory helps really explain the neuroanatomy beneath what's going on in the physiology, and ultimately how that changes and biases how we act, how we react, how we interact, the thoughts and emotions that we experience, and often our behaviors and our habits and our patterns. So for me, polyvagal theory just provides a framework for helping me understand really what it's like to be me, what it's like to be you, what it's really like to be human. And in a way, it helps soften the edges around the judgment and the evaluation and the self-criticism, or even the shame and the blame around behaviors. And when we act in ways or react in ways or even interact in ways that really don't align with our heartfelt intentions or our values or even our goals. So it helps to make sense of all of that through the physiology, through the nervous system.
That seems like a very clear explanation, Michael. So in a way, this may sound a bit of a silly question, but why is this so key to all of us?
Well, because what's going on internally is happening whether we recognize it or not. So when I first meet you, okay, so I'll try to tie it into this interaction. We haven't met before. And so what my nervous system is trying to do is, and yours is doing it too, is we're trying to see, can we trust each other, right? Are we safe enough to actually have this conversation and really free up and be ourselves? Or are we going to sort of protect or defend or wear a mask? And so to me, it's really helpful to just understand that these shifts in our physiology are occurring reflexively and they're adaptive. And they initially occur without our conscious control. But when we understand this, it gives us a moment of agency. It gives us an opportunity, call it free will, call it choice, whatever you want to call it, it gives us a chance to just feel maybe the shift in our body whenever we come into a new interaction or a new environment. And then we have a moment of pause, maybe, to where now we can maybe apply some resources that help settle our body and help me then broadcast to you that actually, yeah, I am safe to talk to, and that my intentions are coming from a really solid place of wanting to help each other explore this topic. So that's what for me, it really changes how I move through the world, just by having that understanding and then having practices that really tap into the physiology in the moment.
Thank you. That's a really clear answer, Michael. So what were you doing before you discovered polyvagal theory?
So I have owned a fitness facility and a wellness center for about 25 years here in Santa Barbara. And so I was teaching people how to exercise, essentially. And I had this really awesome community where people were coming together, and it felt, I don't know if you're familiar with the TV show Cheers back in the 80s, but this little facility felt like a Cheers. So when people walked in, everybody knew, like Norm, hey Norm, that was how it was in Cheers. And that's how it was in this place. And so it was far more than exercising together. It was really this, in my language today, it was this container of safety and connection. That back then I didn't understand what was happening beneath what was playing out on the surface. I just knew it felt really, really, really good, and that it was making big changes in people's lives. And the struggles that people were facing were really about habit change and about interrupting patterns in their life that we would label as maybe unhealthy or not helpful. Say they were eating too much at night, or they were drinking, or they were doing things, maybe they were really struggling to exercise. So really basic lifestyle choices or lifestyle behaviors. And so I started studying behavior science, and I started really getting into habit change. And that worked for really simple things, but it didn't work for those really pivotal habits or patterns and behaviors that, as I discovered polyvagal theory, actually explained that those patterns, those habits, those choices were really someone seeking a way to feel differently. We're really a coping mechanism for a body, for whatever reason, was not in a safe, relaxed, or homeostatic internal environment. And so they were seeking a way to either feel differently or even to stop feeling what they were feeling internally. So about maybe 10 years ago was when I really started studying habit science. And that led me to a gentleman named Rick Hansen, who does all of this incredible work around positive neuroplasticity. And when you get a state in your body going that would actually be healthy and nurturing or even pro-social, how you marinate and how you really exaggerate and feel and experience that. So you start wiring your body to have that state more often and become a trait. And I met with Rick privately, and we had lunch together, and we were talking about different things. And he was the one who actually introduced me to this body of work. And he thought this would really help me to sort of bring it all together, which it did. So once I started really devouring polyvagal theory, it made sense why some of these habits I wasn't able to help my clients and our community through normal habit change and through behavior science. So that's what led me to it.
That's fascinating, but going back a bit and slightly off piste, because you've given this lovely description of your fitness center, which, if I can contrast with my experience of what we call gyms over here, which focus on getting as many people to join and stopping them leaving, or at least stopping them paying, not stopping them paying, if you see what I mean. You obviously made a different kind of choice. How did you do that?
Well, I I had come from working with a physical therapist who was just amazing. And he taught me a lot about how to work with the body. But what he really taught me was the power and the fulfillment of relationships. He did everything. In a way, he actually did too much because he didn't take enough care for himself. But he did everything for his patients, and they trusted him. And what he was really teaching me was how fundamental trust and that co-regulation, or that exchanging cues of safety, that is the basis for healing. And that is the basis for connection. And that really is the basis for most of our organizations and all of the systems in which we operate. There's a level of trust that's required that we see breaking down today. But he taught me that. And that's what I experienced just by being with him for 3 years and being in this clinic that he had created that was about, it was not a typical clinic. It was very much like what I created here, but it was around healing and recovery from injury. And I just took it into when I first opened it, it was considered post-rehab. It was, the tagline was bridging healthcare with fitness. And that was, so he modeled it for me, what it really meant to create community. And that's just what we did. And that was super fulfilling. And I didn't really know the underpinnings of why that was so important and why it really worked. Now I do, but I didn't at the time.
Thank you. So we can see the theme developing in your life there. And you've mentioned trust and safety several times. Do we think about safety enough when thinking about relational work?
I think we need to define what I'm talking about from safety. So I think we often hear the word safety and we think of removing threat, or we think of where I live here in Santa Barbara, a lot of people have fences and walls around their house and security systems and alarms, and that isn't what I'm talking about. So removing threat is really, really helpful, but it's not sufficient. So the safety that we're talking about is a feeling. It's a feeling in the body. And really what that feeling is it's emerging out of the body. So the body is actually moving into a physiological state, an internal environment that is actually supporting our health and well-being. And in that state, what polyvagal theory discovered is that it also then simultaneously gives us the opportunity to socially bond, to communicate that we're on the same team, that we understand each other, and that we're here together. So that's the safety that we're talking about. And to me, it's foundational, whether it's in a healing journey, whether it's in a family, whether it's in my relationship with my partner, whatever that is, whether it's in business, is that feeling that we have together, which I hope we foster with the three of us, that feeling of being safe enough to actually feel safe, to feel like it's okay to trust, that it's safe to trust, right? So to me, the journey is, for a lot of us, we're trying to get back to where we were before maybe we had a violation of trust, or before someone who we really absolutely felt accessible with and who we trusted we could be vulnerable with, maybe we were hurt by them. Or maybe we asked a girl to dance in 7th grade and she said no in front of all of our friends, and we put up a shield. And then we were hoping to be picked for the basketball team and we didn't get picked, and now we put up another shield. So I look at this as we're peeling away these layers of really trying to reconvince our body, not just our mind, but our body, our brainstem, this nervous system, that it's actually safe to feel safe, and that it's actually safe to feel safe with another. And that's what I mean by trust, trusting that it's safe to trust again. And that's the process. That's the journey. And that's what, to me, all of this is about, is helping ourselves and each other to get back to that core of who we really are, which is a trusting, benevolent, kind, compassionate human.
It's really exciting to hear about your work, Michael, especially I think kind of like doing this in quite different settings. If you think of, I mean, Jim, I'm sure is very much dumbing down where you were in terms of a wellness centre, but I suppose in terms of that's the closest representation that I can think of, and to think about this kind of work being done in that way is really exciting. It also brings up kind of, I suppose, thoughts around evolution and the fact that, human beings evolved to live in groups, and increasingly we've become very small, people living on their own increasingly, or living in couples or families, but then being isolated from the community. But also, as you were talking, I was thinking about the big trend towards creating trauma-informed environments, which ultimately that's what you're talking about, and how often both David and I have spent a long time working in prisons and secure hospitals. And there's a lot of talk about creating trauma-informed environments, but actually if people don't feel safe in these environments, it's like, actually, what can you do if people are, there's some fundamental things that need to be put in place, aren't there, first, really? But great to hear that you're doing that in places where people probably, it's not even gone on the radar for many people, I'm sure. It sounds really innovative.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. And it's kind of a stealth way. And in the fitness world, that's what was happening without really talking about it. People were coming in to exercise, but we were doing far more than that, right? And that was the beauty of it. And I think in the world of professional sports, it's the same way. I don't start talking about relationships and all of that with a professional athlete, but it gets there every time. And it usually gets there because they bring it up. And it's about relationships outside of their play, right? So it's in a way, when we have been convinced, again, subconsciously, that it actually isn't safe to feel safe, or that it's safer to be ready to attack or to be defending and protecting, then we need almost a way in that isn't saying, oh, we're going to talk about safety and we're going to talk about relationships, because their bodies already, when they begin to feel accessible, have associations from the past that then they trigger a secondary on guard. And so that's too unknown and uncertain in and of itself. So these more stealth ways in actually can be really effective.
But I'm also thinking that, the reason why lots of people join fitness centres, gyms, if you like, is because they want not only to keep themselves fit, but they do want connection and community. People join as a way of trying to make friends, although I'm not sure that it's really all that successful a way of making friends ordinarily. Just thinking how much more successful gyms might be if more gyms, fitness centres did adopt this approach and helped people feel like they were getting something connection-wise whilst they were down at the gym.
Couldn't agree more. I think things were really shifting that way. I think COVID shifted things again. Unfortunately, COVID was really paradoxical in that when we're under threat, we do want to come together. However, we couldn't come together because we might make each other sick. And so in a lot of ways, we're now trying to recover and trying to reconvince our body that we actually are safe to come back together. So I hope that gyms rebound, and I hope that they do understand that more powerful than helping someone improve their fitness is actually this, getting people to trust that it's safe to trust each other again.
So Michael, how did you end up working with Stephen Porges?
So that was a combination of naivety, really, and a little bit of boldness. So if we go back, it was right before COVID, and I was taking his body of work and applying it really to performance. So I was working with a professional tennis player at the time, a couple other athletes too, but a professional tennis player. And I needed to not have him have to learn a new language. And so I started taking polyvagal theory and putting it in a methodology that an athlete or a high performer could understand. And I followed this athlete for over a year and sharing different things. And so I'd kind of write his story and write what we were doing together. And it turned out to be about 150 pages. And I sent it to Polyvagal Institute the day they opened, which is Steve Porges's institute. And I sent it over there thinking, oh, he'll read this. It's only 150 pages. Long story short, the director was like, you know what, this is great, but he's not going to read this. Can we shrink it down? Can we make it into a presentation? Can you do something that, so I did that. And anyway, I gave that to Steve Porges and he read it and he was like, this is really cool. I didn't think of this. And this is really, and so then we got on a couple Zooms, we did a couple things. And then he ended up inviting me to speak and present this at his first getting together when COVID started releasing. So in 2022, I came over and presented this at a big conference, and that just catapulted into all kinds of things. So it was a little bit of just throwing it out there and him really embodying what he is teaching, in that he was accessible. He was accessible, and not everyone is accessible, right? So to me, it was really important that what I was doing was grounded in science and very accurate. That's really important to me. But more than that was that I was aligned with someone who actually is living, walking, breathing what he's teaching and what he's exploring. And that, so he's truly authentic. And I know him really, really well now, and I'm grateful for that. And the more that I spend time with him, the more I see that he's actually everything he's teaching and sharing.
Which is really lovely to hear that, because so often people disappoint, don't they, in terms of preaching, I don't know, compassion, for instance, and then actually sounding really harsh in their comments. So that's nice to hear that. It sounds like you were already incorporating polyvagal theory without even realising it in your work initially. Did anything change when you learned more of the theory underneath what you were doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, so I was doing a lot, and that's why when I started reading it, it aligned with not only what I was doing in that facility, but just my whole growth and my own healing journey. But what it really has shifted for me is we've always known that relationships are helpful and healthy, right? We've heard a lot of things over the years, so I knew that, but I didn't understand really the mechanisms by which it is improving health and well-being. And so I gave more value to it even than I had before. And it became something that just was this is now who I am. And fostering relationships becomes even more important and more vital. That was one part. Another part was becoming more aware of how I'm showing up in the world, right? So doing what I can in my own preparation, in my own recognition of my own shifts in my physiology, to regroup and to settle back in so that I can present who I really am to the world in every interaction, whether it's going to the market, right? Going wherever, or going to do something like this. So to me now, that's really shifted, where that's front of mind. It's not just background. It's front and center of how can I do my part in sending cues of safety, trust, connection, and ultimately share some sense of belonging with everyone I interact with. Because to me, that's what this can provide. And that's the pathway to bringing all of our people back together, right? And to collaborate and to cooperate. And that's where big change in a good way can happen. So that's what really changed. And then it changed in my parenting. I have two daughters, one who's 23 and one who's 19. And when they were little and before, there's a distinct line pre-polyvagal and post-polyvagal. Pre-polyvagal, it was all about keeping them safe. It was all about removing all of those threats, making sure they were safe. Post, it was like, no, helping them to feel safe, particularly with me, no matter what plays out, and safe enough with that relationship, with our relationship and in themselves, that now they can be bold. They can go out and have their own adventures, knowing that they're never alone. To me, it's if we can feel, not just know, but feel that we have a team, that we're part of a team, that we belong on a team. And right now, if that team is the family, then we're not alone. And then we can be bold. So it changed my role as a dad. Big time.
That's lovely, thank you. And Michael, why is play so related to polyvagal theory?
So play, by definition, the way Dr. Porges defines play is a combination of feeling safe, feeling connected, feeling like everything's okay. You're not defending, you're not attacking. And there's a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of risk, and there's with others. So play is really this combination of feeling safe and relaxed and feeling engaged and uncertain, but not doing it alone, doing it with someone else. So through that, it's kind of what we're doing together. This is play. We're moving in and out of different levels of energy. We're sometimes speaking, sometimes listening, going back and forth, and there's unknown. We don't really know where it's going to go. So play is really, really foundational in that it helps us start to build relationships. And so for a lot of us who might be more in that mobilized body that's ready to run or to fight, play can be really helpful because we can move our bodies like in dance or a team sport and start building that relationship with others that is grounded in trust because we're playing together. We're on the same team where you have the same goals. I've got your back, you've got mine. So all of that is what play is. What it's really doing to the nervous system in polyvagal theory is that it's actually retuning that nervous system to have flexibility, to be able to move and to have this capacity to go from stillness to movement, go from certainty to uncertainty. So it creates this flexibility that now in real life is really vital, right? So that's what play is. Play is huge, and it's a recipe for healing, but it's also a neural exercise that provides more autonomic flexibility.
Thank you. So can you tell us a bit about your Playzone course?
Yeah, so the Playzone course is really from that first manuscript that I sent off to Dr. Porges. The Playzone course is really built around all of that. And it's really for any type of coach, consultant, business leader. There's a number of psychologists, sports psychologists, vocal professionals, anyone who's really trying to help either themselves or others tap into optimizing their physiology to align with their intentions, to support their higher performance, to cultivate resilience. And so we get into the deep science of what's going on beneath the surface. And then we start exploring different tools, different strategies, different resources, what I call creating our container of safety, our container of connection around us, so that when we step on stage or when we go into a difficult interaction, when we know we need to have that conversation with our spouse that is really going to be tricky, we have resources to help ourselves show up in alignment with our highest values, right? Our core, who we are, our why, how to really align with that through the physiology. So that's what the course is. Started it 2.5 years ago, I guess now. We're in our 10th group that's come through. We're over a couple hundred now, and they're all over the world and all different disciplines. And we essentially meet every other week and explore all kinds of case studies. I try to pull things out of real life, or I share people that I'm working with in ways that we can start exploring what's going on in the physiology and how we might, as helpful coaches or consultants or whatever our position is, how we might help them navigate their own physiology with awareness.
Thank you. And it's clear from your description that you're not just working with athletes, you're also working across the board with people from other disciplines, from business. How easy do you find it to get all these people from different backgrounds and different disciplines thinking together about very similar concept, but how they make it apply in different settings?
I haven't found it challenging, because underneath we're all the same human. Part of that might be I only go where I'm asked to, so I don't go knocking on doors. I just go in a door that has been opened. It was interesting. I just went back to Lithuania, and I was in Lithuania for a couple of weeks, and I was presenting at their national once a year HR convention. And that was comprised of HR, management, and some CEOs. And I come over there and I talk about how to relate to this pressure to perform, which is a big thing of what I do too, is really we have to acknowledge that there is a lot of pressure. And that's coming from just this relentless competition. There's constant evaluation, and there's rapid and very unpredictable change for all of us. It doesn't matter what our culture, and even in their culture, it was the same. So that part really aligned, is that let's acknowledge there's a lot of pressure, no matter what our role is. And I would say that in almost all of our roles, from parenting to socializing to work and even play, learning, all of those roles have evaluation, have competition, have expectations put on us by others that we are asked to live up to. And then we're also asked to do it like it's easy and with grace and beauty and as though we got it. And that, from the nervous system's perspective, is just a bombardment of uncertainty, a bombardment of risk. And so for a lot of us, we're living in these bodies for very good reason, that are on guard, or that are overwhelmed, or that move back and forth between being super on guard and attacking and busy, and then crumbling in bed, right? Or numbing out. And so that isn't a disorder. That's an adaptive, natural response to being in a culture that is throwing all of that stuff at us. So I go over to Lithuania, and I'm trying to share this message, right? And then I'm saying that now our culture in the US, and I don't know in Lithuania, but it seemed to be the same. It rewards those who fight. It rewards those who have the loudest voice, who keep just driving no matter what, and don't let anyone or anything get in their way. And I'm saying that that isn't the highest performance. That's not collaborative. That's not cooperative. That's far from creative. That isn't able to hold another person's perspective. And so there is another way. And that is actually getting into the physiology of play, not the physiology of fight, not the physiology of defend, or not the physiology of numbing or protecting. So it was kind of interesting. It was sort of like what I did with Steve Porges. It was kind of bold because their culture, which I've learned after being there, is grounded in fight. They've been fighting for their country for 1,000 years, right? And so in a way, when it's factually true that it isn't safe, sometimes we have to fight. Sometimes we have to defend. Sometimes we have to protect. And recognize that actually doesn't align or support our biological need, which is really to feel safe, to have trusting relationships, to feel connected, and ultimately to feel the sense of belonging. So it's not that we're going to stop all of the fighting or end all of the bombardment, But at the same time, can we recognize that that actually is pitted against our biology? And then can we individually and collectively in our groups, like at work or like our home or with our peer group or in our community organizations, can we start fostering more and more of that? Knowing that out there, it might be fight. It might be. And most people you're coming against might be fighting. But is there a different way? So it was just interesting. And it was well received, that message. As far as I know, it seems to have been well received.
Sounds as though what you're trying to do is help people be much more conscious of factors that are there that actually they might not have much power to change perhaps at times, but actually just knowing what's going on might help them pause for a moment before acting, for instance, rather than just reacting in a fierce defensive way, for instance, as an example.
Yeah, and to not feel shame or blame or guilt for feeling a certain way or not feeling, right? Like it's a natural adaptive reaction that we all share. And so knowing that and creating a life and habits and maybe even relationships that start now to support this feeling of trust and safety can help give us that moment of pause. And so that's it. Like to me, yes, I want to help others have awareness and to not have self-criticism for how their body at this moment is responding to the world or how it reacts in certain situations, but now to have a little bit of agency so that they can help align with their values, their goals.
Thank you.
Michael, you're clearly engaged with fitness and the notion of fitness. Are you engaged with sport itself, yourself? Do you play sports? Or?
Yeah. So I play tennis regularly, and that's my core group of male friends is in tennis. And again, the tennis itself is the sport, but it's our relationships, and it's talking sometimes during, mostly it's talking after a match. But yeah, to me, team sports have always been a part of my life. Tennis isn't necessarily a team sport, but when you get older, it becomes more about the friendships and all of that. And you're competing, and sometimes you play doubles against other guys and everything. So it really is still, to me, a team sport at this stage of life. And I think there's real team sports, if they create this sense of belonging, if each player, whether they start, whether they never play, if they feel they're contributing value to the team, if they're appreciated and included, they can be so powerful for doing what we're talking about. Like, to me, there's almost no better feeling. Being a dad is right there too, right? And all of that, but there is a feeling of when you're part of a team, whether it's as a coach or as a player, that is just it feels so good. It feels so good. Like when you're actually high-fiving somebody and it's sincere and you're making eye contact and it is so instinctual. And it doesn't have to be in a team sport. It can be anything. For me, it's team sports. But it can be anything like that. But that, to me, is getting at the core of really who we are and who we're meant to be. And it's not about fighting. And when a team is really together, there may be moments where I even coach a player or coach a team that their body is so unsettled in that moment that they have to channel some fight together. Okay, that's okay. But it's for a short duration. And it's with an understanding of where we're trying to get to, which is a state of play, which is a state of camaraderie of we're doing this together. And so to me, if you can find anything where you feel part of a team, whether it's singing in a choir, whether it's doing a dance class, whether it's doing art with others, whatever it is, where if you can combine what really gets you going, right? It doesn't have to be high energy. just gets you connected and grounded with others, to me, that is the recipe for health and well-being and healing. It isn't about exercise. It isn't about eating right. Those things all play a role, but as someone who's lived in this world, like my whole life, I was an engineer and then I pivoted into all of this. And so I've been in fitness and wellness for 30 years now, a little more actually. And I would say that is all the fitness, the exercise, the sleep, the nutrition, all of those components are just helping add to the physiology that is now capable of having relationships. But the real healing and the real beauty of life is in this. And I always had heard that, and I never really bought it. I didn't really, I'm like, yeah, what, okay. And now I get it. And now I get it at the level of why in the neural mechanisms support it. And now I feel it. So it's a different level. And so that's what I was doing intuitively. And it is fun to really look back and see what was happening. And I understand now why it felt so good and what was really going on.
Thank you. That's a great way of pushing it. So I'm thinking about the future a bit, and obviously you've been working with people in Lithuania. It's not often I meet somebody else who's been to Lithuania. I was in Vilnius in the early 90s, just after the Russians had tried their invasion. Yeah. Great place, beautiful place. So how are you hoping to develop things further?
Yeah, in a couple of ways. I'm hoping to continue to expand the reach in this Playzone community that I've started to build. I'm hoping to help the Polyvagal Institute as well, just expand their reach, and we're doing that. So I'm really engaged in Polyvagal Institute and playing my role. I help teach a number of different courses. I'll go and present and do different things. So I'm really trying to bring polyvagal theory to the masses in a way that's digestible, in a way that they can actually apply and use, and doesn't have to be science. Although I understand the science, my goal is to teach it in a way that doesn't require that. So that's another part. I'm also writing. I started a thing on Psychology Today, a platform, and it's called The Pressure Paradox. To me, that's really important, is getting this message out of what this culture, because I'm seeing, and as a father, I'm seeing how that's impacting our kids. I was just reading yesterday about the National Spelling Bee. We have this National Spelling Bee in the States for these young kids. I think they have to stop when they're 14. And these kids are feeling tremendous pressure. And, and they're 11, they're 12. And the people they were interviewing were saying, yeah, these kids are just putting so much pressure on themselves. Yes, but let's acknowledge, actually, the more attuned a kid is, the more they're going to feel the pressure, because it's all around them, right? So doing my part in whatever way to help us actually see what this culture is doing to our biology, to our physiology, is where I want to be, right? Like, and so I go, like I said, I go wherever I'm asked. I don't knock on doors. I just go through a door when it opens, and which is why I'm here today too with you. And so to me, this is a stage of life for me where I can do that. I don't have to show up at something anymore. I'm really blessed and fortunate. And so I want to do my part in expanding this message, and ultimately, though, having a place for people to go where they find this, where they get this shared understanding, this welcoming, this quest to improve not only one's life and align it with our own intentions, but really to spread that, to be accessible, to be authentic. Yeah. Thank you.
So finally, Michael, how has this work changed you in your personal life? You know, how do you make sure that you keep yourself feeling safe?
Yeah, to me, it's front and center, like I kind of mentioned. So the way I design my day, that's always in how I design the day. Whether it's having a morning ritual that is about ways that my body welcomes. So for each of us, it's finding what our body welcomes. What does your body actually welcome and receive as reassuring, as safe, as connecting? And it could be music. It could be breathing, right? It could be a walk in nature. It could be playing games with others. And so I do what I can in each day to construct relationships, time for myself, time with family, time with friends, right? That are all around feeding my body more and more safety, more and more connection, more and more of a sense of belonging, and then deliberately stepping out of that and taking some challenge and taking some risk, but then coming back. So to me, it's just changed. Instead of looking, I'd say before, even though I was in the world of fitness and well-being, before it was all about training. It was all about, making sure you eat the right foods. It was all about sleep. And again, those are important factors, but now it's broader than that. It's about what is actually it's meeting my body where it is, and then what actually in this moment would meet my body, not only where it is, but where it would actually ground more in homeostasis or ground more in recovery.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's really nice meeting you, and I thought that was a great conversation. Thanks a lot.
Oh, you're welcome. That was fun. Yeah, thank you. Good question.
Yeah, I think people will get a lot out of that. It was a nice conversation.
Oh, good.